Hello and welcome to Quays World News. I'm Atishay Jain. Coming up on today's program, the UK's cost of living crisis has impacted how people are spending their money and changing their grocery shops and turning to second-hand goods. Indian wrestlers take to the streets to protest against the Wrestling Federation of India. President Birbhushan Singh accused of 7 counts of sexual assault. And this year's Eurovision Song Contest unites to Liverpool and Ukraine through music. We start with today's top stories from around the world. The last flight for evacuating UK citizens from Sudan departed today early in the morning. A negotiated short-term ceasefire allowed UK evacuation flights to take off from the airstrip near Khartoum.
We have some of the largest numbers of British nationals on the ground, and rightly, and I'm sure the whole House will agree with me, that it is reasonable, legal and fair to prioritise those most vulnerable families, particularly those with elderly people in them, medical conditions, but also children, Mr. Speaker.
So far, over 2,300 people have been safely airlifted on the 28 UK flights. Foreign Secretary James Cleverly said British nationals still wanting to leave the country should go to the Coral Hotel in Port Sudan by 10 a.m. local time. He added that there would be no further British evacuation flights from the city. At least 8 students at a security guard are dead after a terrifying school shooting in Siberia's capital of Belgrade. Multiple other casualties have been reported in the incident who have been taken over by the hospital. The police have arrested the suspect, the 14-year-old Vladislav Rebenika, school in Central Brigade. The suspect is alleged to have used his father's gun, and an investigation into the motives behind the incident is underway by the officials. After a massive uproar in regards of an anti-LGBTQ bills passed by the Uganda Parliament, and a revised bill was passed yesterday. The bill has drew condemnation from United States, the European Union, United Nations, and major corporations all around the world, and is regarded as one of the world's strictest anti-LGBTQ bills, and has remained mostly unchanged, including provision for long jail terms and a death penalty.
Our morals will protect our children, and we are making this law. We are making this law for ourselves. We are making this law for our children. We are making this law for the children of our children. This country will stand firm. And once it passed, I can tell you, Madam Speaker, we are going to reinforce the law enforcement officers to make sure that homosexuals have no space in Uganda.
Despite the President of Uganda requesting some parts of the original legislation to be toned down, the provisions retained in the new bill and allow for a death penalty in cases of so-called aggravated homosexuality, a term the government uses to describe actions including having gay sex when HIV positive. The legislation now heads back to President Yoweri Museveni, who can sign it, veto it, or return it again to the Parliament. Now, the UK's cost of living crisis has been a prominent issue for many months now. Srilakshmi Srijit investigated how shoppers are changing their habits as food prices begin to rise.
Food prices increased by a record annual rate of 15.7% last month. Fresh fruit prices saw a record increase of 17.8% in the month of April, while the price of tin goods and other snow-covered items went up 12.9%.
There's definitely a rise in prices with things like food and energy and transport, so everything's costing a lot more to kind of do these days. So our budgeting, more planning meals better, using more leftovers in food and everything like that, making sure that we're not wasting everything, which I did anyway, but even more so these days.
Now coping with the cost of living, trying to keep in front, but not always possible to. But yeah, I'm managing. Price of food has gone up a lot. So I've got to sit down on one thing and, to be able to pay for another. Yeah, that's about it.
According to the latest research by the Independent Food Aid Network, record number of people are depending on food banks in UK than ever before. With the cost of living crisis entering a new phase, action is required to prevent soaring food costs from stocking already worrying health inequalities. Failure would risk perpetuating the crisis long into the future.
Meanwhile, our reporter Gino Donnell looked into how the cost of living crisis is fueling a rise in second-hand purchases.
The cost of living crisis leads to tremendous growth in second-hand retail in the UK, with rising concerns about the environmental and ethical costs of the consumer goods industry worldwide. Second-hand retail has seen growing importance over recent years. According to global data, the resale market in the UK grew by 149% between 2016 and 2022. With the cost of living has hit a 30-year high, the market is forecast to rise by 67.5% from 2022 to 2026.
I work at the children's, assistant manager at the Children's Society, Lemon June. We help with the environment, like obviously everything is second hand, so obviously it's being recycled. Everything is at a low price, so it helps with the cost of living. And we do a lot of recycling ourselves as well by anything we don't use, example like clothes, bric-a-brac, we pass on to be recycled elsewhere, so nothing, as much as we can not get wasted. So yeah, that's how we try our best to help with the environment and the cost of living.
The UK's most popular charity shop belongs to British Heart Foundation. The organisation runs 724 shops across the United Kingdom. The revenue the British Heart Foundation generates from the sales of goods are used for funding research on heart diseases and related conditions. Pre-loved products have now moved from the fringes of society to become the mainstream.
Now, time for some sports news in the studio with Godwin Matthew. Over to you, Godwin.
Thank you, Atishay. First off on sports, we go to the National League, where Hollywood star Ryan Reynolds owned Wrexham scripted history by amassing 111 points in 46 games to secure their promotion to League Two. England star midfielder Jude Bellingham has agreed to complete a deal with reigning European champions Real Madrid. The 19-year-old was rumoured to be in Liverpool's plan and was also linked to several other English clubs. This news comes just days after the Los Blancos were reported to have agreed a one-year extension with midfielder Toni Kroos. Now in basketball, the NBA announced Joel Embiid the MVP of the 2022-23 season. The big man averaged 33.1 points per game and 10.2 rebounds per game on his way to winning the prestigious trophy. The 29-year-old suffered a knee injury in the first-round playoff series against the Brooklyn Nets. He missed out the first game of the conference semifinals against the 8th seed Miami Heat, but is expected to be back tonight for the team in their game against the Philadelphia 76ers. Moving on to wrestling. Indian wrestlers are taking to the streets to protest against the Wrestling Federation of India President Mr. Brij Bhushan Singh, who has been accused of sexual assault by 7 grapplers. Indian wrestlers have taken to the streets to protest against the president of the Wrestling Federation, Mr. Brij Bhushan Singh. The wrestlers have accused the 6-time Member of Parliament of sexual assault on 7 girls, one of which is a minor. Led by star grapplers Vinesh Phogat, Sakshi Malik and Bajrang Punia, the wrestlers have been at loggerheads with the Federation and Sports Ministry since January. However, they ended their earlier protest back then as they were promised that the issue would be looked into by a special oversight committee. With no progress on the issue after 3 whole months, the wrestlers returned to the streets outside Jantar Mantar on April 23rd. This time, however, the wrestlers are determined to only stop after obtaining justice. Despite the immense success wrestling has brought to India, the sport is in a state of a huge predicament as there are no reforms that help women in such situations. Mr. Rahul Mehra, who is an experienced sports activist, told us that the broken system in Indian sports is one of the biggest reasons such incidents happen.
So subject to correction, to my limited knowledge, and I've been working in this space for almost 22 years now, and I'm a lawyer with a standing of about 23 years. So I've spent almost all my time dealing with sports and sports bodies ever since I've been a lawyer. With that limited knowledge of mine, I would say that there's no system at all. There is absolutely nothing within the sporting federations which at least deals with the protection of women athletes, and that also we include now children, because there are minor athletes as well, from sexual harassment at the workplace, which could be their training grounds, which could be the federation itself, their offices, and the works.
The wrestlers are now in the 10th day of their protest. Their resilience has resulted in an FIR being filed against Mr. Brij Bhushan Singh on 2 cases. One of them being sexual misbehavior on minors, which according to the Indian Penal Code is a non-bailable offence. Despite these serious charges against him, Mr. Singh is yet to be arrested by Delhi police. Mr. Rahul Mehra stated that the executive committee should have taken action against the president as soon as the allegations were alleged on Mr. Singh.
All this. You had a fiduciary relationship with your athlete. If this is not gross misconduct, what else is? It was the bounden duty under the provisions of the sports code of the executive committee to stand up against its president, Brij Bhushan Singh, and lodge a criminal complaint on behalf of these 7 complainants who are the victims as girls.
Thank you, Godwin, and I hope the justice is delivered in this case. And finally, it's not just King Charles' coronation that will be a cause for celebration this May. This year's Eurovision Song Contest will be held in Liverpool next week. Amy Tobias went down to this year's host city on Monday to see how things are shaping up.
Ahead of the opening ceremony and fan village at Pier Head, the city was relatively quiet, but anticipation was high. There were plenty of tourists and locals alike gathering to observe Liverpool's cultural and musical heritage, including the iconic Beatles. I spoke to some of the Eurovision volunteers about their roles promoting the cultural celebration around the city.
So I'm one of the arts volunteers, so what I do is I walk around different arts exhibitions and give people more insight into the piece, show people where to go, where to find the next one, that kind of thing. So at the moment I'm on the Songbird Trail. We've got 12 songbirds around the city placed in all different places, each one representing a different region of Ukraine with a different pattern that represents each region. So it's really interesting and people are engaging a lot.
Ukraine were last year's winners, but due to the ongoing conflict in the country, second place UK offered to host the event on their behalf. The volunteers told me about how Liverpool is paying homage to Ukraine and celebrating the contest's theme, United by Music.
From my experience of walking around today, I've noticed there's an interest in what's coming up, and I think it's only early days yet. Obviously the songbirds are the first sort of tangible evidence of what's going on. But I think as the weeks progress towards the countdown for the Eurovision, I think you're going to find a lot of cultural crossovers.
I am living here around here and I'm from Ukraine. It's my first time in such investigation, big parade, so I'm just looking for everything, especially to see maybe familiar faces, language, and I'm just excited to see everything related with Ukraine.
Ukraine have been at the heart and centre of everything that Eurovision has sort of brought to Liverpool. So in a way, as much as we're hosting, it really does feel like we're hosting on behalf of Ukraine.
I'm here now at the main arena, which will host the 37 competing countries in 9 different shows, including the preview shows, the semi-finals on the 9th and 11th of May, and the grand final on Saturday the 13th.
That's all from us today on Quays World News. Thank you for watching. Have a lovely evening. Goodbye.